Alright, so here I am playing more 5-minute Blitz on the Internet Chess Club, chessclub.com. So my this opening is called the Modern Defense. Right, that's right. Okay, so I'm going to play this setup with the two knights. Yeah, there are more aggressive setups like the 360 attack. So I've changed my settings a bit, so hopefully the video quality is a bit better than last time. Okay, the particular setup that my opponent's going for here is called the the hippopotamus defense. So he's going to manual castle by putting his king on g8 and h7. Alright, so I've obviously not played in the best way. I've just been having a bit of fun and moving my pieces everywhere. The one weakness he has is this square on e6. So since he's moved his pawn to d5, he's relinquished control of this e5 square, so I might try and control it a bit more. So it's starting to look, it was a bit precarious before. I think he could have played f4 earlier and tried to win my pawn. Or even better, he could have played rook e8. Anyway, so now I think he's going to try to attack me on the king side. And what I have to do is distract him on the queen side. But I also need to watch out for my time. So sorry, I haven't been talking much, because I've been trying to gain my time back. Otherwise I really run a risk of losing. So at the right time I want to move my queen around and attack him from the queen side. I suspect it might be a good time now. I'm going to check him and then take his bishop with check. So I ended up doing something very dodgy to be able to win that, but let's just go back and see if we can find the best way. So probably, okay, so what I missed here was that I can just play Queen F7 check, and now there's one line that wins quickly. One line that would win easily is check when Queen takes G6 is forced. And now, after he takes there, I check him on the H file. He has to go to the G file. I check him on the G file. He has to move away, and then I take his pawn. Alternatively, there is a checkmate in 5 moves with knight f4 because something with this is happening, and there's nothing black can do to stop that. So let's play one more game. So this is a guy I've played before. It's Grandmaster from England. This is a well-known setup to avoid theory, and I'm not sure if it has a name. I'm gonna play Queen to B8 just to stop his knight from coming into E5. Alright, he's going to move his knight and I think push his pawn up. Or not, okay, so he's not going to go for that plan. No, I think I'm just going to simplify and open the center. Now he's going to take that pawn, and I can decide whether I want an isolated pawn or a capture with the knight. Let's see for yeah, I'm not really liking. I think he's got too much counterplay. I don't see anything better than to trade. So I think I'll just have to defend this endgame, which is not the easiest endgame to defend. Well, at least it's helped me fix my pawn structure somewhat. So it looks like I've gained the pawn back, but this position's oh, I just lost the pawn back. Okay, right. So let's just go back and see where I think it was somewhere around here. I started to drift into a worse position, and then he was able to convert his extra pawn into a win. Plus I had doubled pawns and it started getting pretty ugly. So I felt like e5 was reasonable. The computer doesn't really like it. It just wants me to play just something random. And just, I mean, if my opponent's not going to show anything, it's just not going to do much. I really don't see any clear plan here. In general, with these types of positions, there's two breaks you can make. Pawn to c5 and pawn to e5. And these breaks open up the position and often lead to a mass trade of pieces like e5 did. Sometimes you accompany this with taking the pawn first, just to avoid any awkward tactics if white takes the pawn and you have to take back in an awkward way. Another way that's sometimes played is to play b5. I don't know if that can be done here. It's probably a little risky, because I'm thinking white's going to trade pawns and then get a rook on c6. So b5. I think black's okay. I guess b5 was a reasonable way to play. So anyway, I played e5. I was thinking about knight takes here, but I didn't like... So the computer's quite liking knight c4, which it says gives white a reasonable size advantage. I wasn't liking bishop takes, and now if pawn takes, then white has this good knight versus bad bishop, and he's going to put the knight on d4. Sorry. And I didn't like how after queen takes, white had knight c4. And now my queen should go to the square that doesn't allow him to play rook d7, which gets all this activity. But f5 isn't possible because of knight d6. So you go to e6. But now rook d6 comes with tempo. And you can follow with this. Oh, it looks like black's doing okay. He has enough time to challenge control of the D file, which is obviously the most important thing in this position because it's the only open file. But instead of rook d6, white can also just play f3 and then e4, which blocks in black's bishop. It wouldn't be shooting down this diagonal anymore. Anyway, I played this. Computer likes queen b5 straight away, which makes sense because this pawn is awkward to defend. Because I've moved my bishop away from c8 and now it's all the way over here, the pawn often has difficulties. Knight d4 looks fairly standard. I was really thinking about playing a6 here, but it wasn't because of queen b5. I was just concerned that the knight would come in. a6 looks okay. Certainly white can't do what he played in the game. So the only concern is that white will come to dominate the c file. Also, this pawn is somewhat of a weakness, but it's well protected by the knight now, and he's only attacking it once. So, one thing you might be concerned about is white's going to double on the c file, but this looks okay. So the computer doesn't like queen d7 so much. So now if he doubles, I can play rook takes c3, rook takes c3, and the computer's saying bishop e4. And it's thinking that white doesn't have much of an advantage here. So I guess if bishop takes, d takes, I'm concerned about, okay, so the computer's just saying knight d5. So knight d5 is good square for the knight because it controls various squares in the center, and importantly it controls the c7 square and stops the invasion onto the 7th rank, which is always the thing you have to worry about when rooks are involved, sometimes even queens. So rook c5, queen d7. Looks like black's doing okay. I was thinking queen d7. So I just realized one other thing black needs to worry about is that white can force black's hand by playing bishop h3 at some point, and this will force the rook to move, and there's no, if the rook moves away to if the rook doesn't trade with the other rook, white's going to come down to c7 and he's going to win material. And if it does trade, then for example, so like if white protects, black protects the rook, and now you can't come back to the c file because the bishop's controlling that square. So now white actually has a free hand on the c file, and he's just going to come down the next move and try to take. Black can try to defend this, I guess, by maybe playing rook e7. Anyway, so I was concerned about rook c3. So after the move a6, which didn't happen in the game, so the computer likes rook takes c3, which I just showed. I was thinking queen d7 because now black can take and then move the other rook there the next move and try to trade more material. And I guess I should elaborate on the reason why you'd want to trade material here. White would love it if everything here were reduced to if the knights and bishops were traded off, because that would really emphasize the weakness of the isolated d pawn, and he could put all his pieces on one file and just attack that. So a typical way that might be done So let's just say white's able to somehow trade all these pieces. So, okay, I can't be bothered trying to think of a way where that's done. So now we have something like this. Just ignoring the fact that the pawns could have been captured on the previous move. And this kind of position is very good for white. So this is what he wants to reduce to. So now one plan might be, if something like this were to happen, all the pieces attacking the pawn, all the pieces defending the pawn. Well, okay, it's not the best time to do that. So now would be a perfect time to play this very typical move in this kind of position against the isolated pawn. White can play e4, and because the pawn's isolated, black can't move a pawn to defend that pawn, so it makes this tactic particularly potent. And this tactic exploits the pin, and white's just going to win a pawn, which is very typical. There are other ways to play against the isolated pawn. You can sort of seeing that all the black's pieces are trying to defend the pawn, you can maybe move around and try and attack white's king while his other pieces are distracted, which is also very typical. So anyway, going back to the game, this is why I was trying to trade off rooks all the time. So just quickly, if this line were to happen, the computer likes white. Can't really see a great reason. It's suggesting queen f1 or queen e1. I guess now if you take, then white's going to take with the queen and is going to have two pieces on the file. So yeah, white is better here. Alright, so he plays h3. Now I played queen d7 with the same idea. I was going to capture and then play the other rook to c8, which is very typical as well. But now queen b5 seems strong. Computer's saying the best move is bishop f5, defending the queen. What if... Oh, of course, you can't take the bishop because the queen's not defended. So I guess, yeah, this looks like a very suitable defense. It doesn't look like black's doing too badly. And if white takes, black's just going to take with the bishop. The pawn's defended by the knight. Looks like everything's going to be okay. And white's just going to take and then play the other. Black's going to take and play the other rook to c8. So the move I played, as an alternative, I suppose. Oh no, there's no way to defend everything at the same time. Probably the next best move is to play rook to d8, but now white's doing quite well. You can either play queen a5 and keep attacking, or you can just trade and play knight b5. Black's not doing too badly here, but it is much worse than bishop f5. So anyway, this was, I think, well, even the computer considers taking the queen a bit of a mistake. Because the problem now is, he's now, by moving the knight, he's now attacking the pawn twice. And he's threatening to take over. If I come and defend it, he's going to come down and take complete control of C file, which is strategically lost. Like, I'm always lost in the long term if I let him do that. So he took an A7 very quickly, which surprised me a bit. I thought he might consider taking and then maybe taking on D5. But this is not so great. Well, for one thing, black can't play rook d8 and pin the rook because of bishop takes, and then white takes the rook. But even better is to take on d5 than to give a check, and then after bishop e4 you're threatening checkmate on h1, so white has to give a check, and it thinks that black's doing okay. The king's a little bit trapped. You're threatening a perpetual check right now, to check over and over again. Yeah, so black's doing fine. So anyway, this happened. White can also just take straight away because of back rank problems. So if black takes with the rook, it's going to get checkmated. But anyway, this is pretty good as well. So I played rook b2 quickly. What I really should play is rook c2. Yeah, this looks like a much better endgame than the one I played into. Computer saying rook b8. I'm guessing this is not so good. I'd rather play this endgame actually. It looks slightly more defensible than keeping the rooks on. Anyway, this happened. Played king f8, which is actually the best move according to the computer. Because we have all these problems arising from the fact that I can't move my rook off the back rank because of these problems. I was thinking maybe he might play rook here, but then to try and pin the rook from this side. But then I can just give a check and play bishop c2, which breaks the pin. So this kind of position is hard to defend. If this e-pawn were back on g7, it might be a bit easier. A typical setup black would try to create would be to, if this pawn were on the g file, would be to put pawns like this, because this is conducive to white needing to play a break in order to advance, and then the more pieces you trade off, the more pawns you trade, the easier it becomes to create the draw. But with the pawn on e6, it's somewhat harder. I guess I don't even have to take the pawn here necessarily. It might lead to problems. Because the thing is, his king's trapped on one side of the board. I don't know, potentially this might have been a better way to go. But at the same time, I was going to lose on time, because he's got an extra 3 minutes. So this is always hopeless in some way. So it's saying that... Oh, okay, this is the best way to go. Because now White can't take the pawn because of his own defense. Which makes sense because... it makes sense to put the rook on an active square behind the enemy ranks. Instead, I chose a bit more of a passive approach. I just waited for me to move my king out at the right time. I should have just kept waiting. And once we have this kind of position, it's dead winning. Especially if okay, it's dead winning when I lose the pawn, but there's a good chance that I'm going to lose the pawn. Because my king's like really stuck to one side, and the way to make me lose the pawn is to split my resources in defending the pawn as well as attacking my king at the same time, in which I'd have to defend the king, and with those exploiting those two weaknesses together at the same time, it allows you to win the pawn. So I'm going to lose the pawn at some stage. So I decided just to move it, but there's nothing I can do. Once this one, this is a classically dead winning position. White's just gonna move slowly. Just make sure you protect the pawns at all times. But this kind of position is fairly straightforward to win. You can just practice it on your own and convince yourself. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching this video.